Excavation Profits Podcast by Excavation Marketing Pros. Interviews with successful excavation and septic business owners, revealing how they market and grow their business in today's economy. Hear directly from the most successful leaders in your business and discover what they're doing to keep their phone ringing, equipment running, and businesses booming. Now your host, Scott Andreessen.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Excavation Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Andreessen, and we have a very special guest on the podcast today, Jonathan Goldhill, who is a business growth expert, and he is published author of this book right here, The Disruptive Successor. Amazing book, a lot of great information in here. Jonathan, how are you today?
Scott, I'm really well. Thanks for having me on your show today. Look forward to talking about the subject at hand here.
Absolutely. So the subject is 7 keys to successfully transfer your excavation business to your kids, right?
Yep, exactly. And why would you want to do that, Scott? Why would you want to transfer your business to your kids? We'll talk about that, I guess, right?
Yeah. Now, I've talked with hundreds of excavation business owners and septic business owners, and by and large, many are multi-generational family-owned businesses where it starts with sometimes the great-grandfather or even before that, but then the grandfather, the father, and then transfers it to the son or, the rest of the children.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, right? There isn't a lot of schooling that people go to learn and think, I'm going to go to school and become an excavator when I get out of school. It's a trade that you learn that's passed down from generation to generation, like other trades, like, for instance, plumbing. You notice on the trucks in your community, it's oftentimes something and sons or something and sons. Plumbing is learned through your father, who learned it through his father, etc.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. The grandfather, the father owns the business, and it's a thriving business, and they want to keep this legacy going for generations to come. What are their next steps? How do they know they're doing the right thing?
Yeah, well, first, they're doing the right thing if they're making a profit and they're putting food on the table and they're taking, they got a roof over their head, and maybe if they're successful, they got a second roof and a second home and a family that they're really involving in the business. But once you've got the keys to running a successful excavation business, then you have to look at what is the succession plan here. What is the intention? Are you going to try and sell this? It's probably an easier business to transfer to your children if they're interested, if they show some aptitude. And then the first step is to start the succession planning process well in advance and several years before you intend to retire or step back from the business. And this can allow ample time to address any issues and make necessary adjustments.
Interesting. Okay, so planning several years in advance. That makes sense.
Yeah.
An already successful business, I think, is a takeaway that you wouldn't want to transfer a failing business to the kids. And so, okay, they start several years in advance. The business is profitable. It's doing well.
Right.
What are some of these, what's the next step?
So let's talk about how you involve, or how an owner involves their child or children in the business, right? It's done gradually. It starts by putting them in operations. They want to gain, and you want them to gain some hands-on experience in the various aspects of the business. You'll want them out in the field so they understand what field work looks like. You'll want them in the office so they'll understand the operations of sales, collecting, You'll have to teach them some financial skills. If you don't have them, you'll have to get them or have them get them. Or maybe they went to school, and maybe you send them to a class to learn things like accounting and finances. And they can also go to school, or when I say school, this could be courses. Dale Carnegie, for instance, teaches great courses on leadership and management. They're not expensive. They've been around for decades. This helps them to understand the business deeply from the inside and then develop the necessary skills that may be lacking in the business if the business has yet to become what I call professionalized. And professionalizing a business means having it run more like a corporation or a company. So it's got some structure, it's got job descriptions, people know what they're responsible for. Maybe there are key measures that are being tracked on a regular basis. And there might even, at the point of some sophistication, have some regular meetings to talk about how to make the business better, how to improve it, how to grow it. So,
okay.
So those are some basic steps. And I'll just layer in that you want to provide some formal training and education. So you want to encourage your children to pursue any relevant education and training beyond what I've just described. So that would mean maybe formal education in business management, maybe specific training related to the excavating industry, maybe mentoring or sending them to industry workshops, industry seminars.
Got it. And so when you talk about structure, can you go a little deeper on how well structured the business should be, what type of structure and systems they should have in place to transfer to their kids?
Sure. So let me address it in two parts. One is the structure of running a business that can work in your absence. And to do that, you need some kind of a playbook, whether it's a business operating system. A popular one is the entrepreneurial operating system. And this is a playbook for having meetings, tracking measures, identifying priorities, identifying to-do list items, and making sure that you're moving on all fronts. This is also a place to document what is your core values, your vision for the 3, 5, 10-year vision for the business, your why, which is an all-together popular topic these days, which is what is your why, and getting people involved in your why. So from an internal standpoint, that's where I spend most of my time with my clients, is implementing some kind of a business operating system so that they can execute on their goals. But I think your question also involves, what does the transfer process look like? And this is where you want to establish clear roles and responsibilities, because those are going to evolve and change over time. Right? You're going to pass the baton from one generation to the next. There should be some kind of a timeline so that this is what I expect you to be able to do by when, and then by this next date, and then by the following date. And then you might have in there some contingency plans for unforeseen circumstances. Things happen, right? Death, disability, divorces, all these things need to be thought through. Because the other day I was on a phone call with someone who was talking about a client who had a pretty good business, and he had inherited it from his father when his father passed. And suddenly when his father passed, he didn't know that his father died what is called intestate, meaning there was no will or trust in place. And suddenly he found that he was in business with his father's, it's either then wife or girlfriend. And through a series of bad decision making, from what I understand, she bankrupted the company. So that's not a good contingency plan. That is a poor or lack of a contingency plan. So here's where you really want to consult with legal and financial advisors to ensure that you have some kind of a plan, that it's sound, it's legally compliant, it protects your children. And, here's where also you're going to have to make some difficult decisions, Scott. Are you going to just transfer the business and let them inherit it? Well, if it's a smaller excavation business and you don't have a lot of other assets, then you'll fall under the lifetime gift tax exemption. But if it's a larger business, or if you believe that, no, my child shouldn't just inherit this, they should earn it, they should buy into it, then you'll have to structure some kind of a buyout arrangement. And that might look like an earnout, or it might look like them getting a loan and paying it in cash, or some combination thereof. And you'll need to do a formal asset, or basically business appraisal, so that a fair market value price can be set on it, and the transfer can be, again, legally and financially sound and compliant and clean. So, long answer to your question, because there's both an internal process, and there's what I'm referring to as an external process.
Yeah. What are some pitfalls to avoid in transferring to your kids?
Yeah. So some of the challenges that I've observed is, well, not all kids are alike, right, in your family. And so the question is who's going to be the leader? Who's going to be the CEO of this company? And so one of the pitfalls is, I think, making people co-CEOs, or not clarifying who has the absolute ultimate decision-making authority. And so sometimes it works well. Sometimes your kids, they get along really well. They complement their skills, and they don't make decisions that ever steps on the other siblings' decision making. And so you have to know your children really well and know what's going to work best with these kids. But oftentimes I find that there's one leader that emerges. You need to make that clear, and you need to communicate it, and you need to address any concerns, misunderstandings, conflicts, and do this well in advance of the transfer actually taking place. Because I've seen it. You've probably seen it. Matter of fact, there was a guest on my podcast that was I would say a victim. He went through it personally. He has a large $100 million a year general construction business. And he is oftentimes in competition, because he competes mostly on municipal and public works projects. He is in competition very often with his brothers, his cousins, other family members. It's a 100-year-old business, and there's 4 competing businesses in this area. It's north of San Francisco, and they're all competing on the public works projects, and their company names sound very familiar. And this is because there's divisions in families. Brothers, let's say, start a business. They're older. Now they've got their children. The children are cousins of each other. Maybe they don't all get along or all like each other. There's a tendency to split off. So how you manage your family and how you manage your business are going to be integrally intertwined. And this is a challenge, right? So these are some of the pitfalls that most recently I had a client who built the business, he and his brother and their father, and they have other siblings and some some step siblings in the business, and there was a difference of opinion about how to, what direction to take the business in or how much to grow the business. And there was some infighting between the two brothers, and it resulted in one brother basically winning out and convincing the other brother to leave, and they would buy him out. I think oftentimes how the parent manages the relationship amongst their children is the dynamic that defines how the business is going to be transferred.
Yeah. Thinking about this, you mentioned leadership, and there's a lot of excavation and septic business owners in this situation where they're looking to transfer to their kids. And I can see how the quarrels would come about if there's, multiple siblings of, I'm in charge, no, I'm in charge. It almost seems like it would make sense for them to get a mediator, a person in the middle like you, to help them kind of diffuse the situation in that way. And so if it comes up a question on leadership of who's going to run the company, do you see that sometimes the business owners are going to you and maybe you're using personality tests or something to help facilitate that, if this person, looks to be, based on tests, the right choice? Or how does that work?
Yeah, I think there is a case to be made for using assessments. And, we don't like to call them tests, or because personalities aren't fixed, right? Right. You could be a genius marketer and decide that now you're going to pursue operations in the business. And, the assessment's not going to tell me one way or the other. I think that an experienced business person that's highly emotionally intelligent, has business intelligence, I like to think of myself as having both, but that we can have a series of conversations that get pretty in depth, that allow us to not only assess their current capability, but their potential, and identify areas that they might need to improve, i.e. sales, i.e. market, selling, marketing, operations, financial knowledge, communication, emotional intelligence, or whatever is needed. But I think that the experience of an outside individual who's objective, who can really look at these individuals and assess their capacity for leadership. And I think that there are maybe some leadership assessments, or better, maybe leadership questions, that a coach like myself can bring to the table to flush out, maybe is the right word, whether or not this person has the leadership skills and potential and the aptitude to learn. Mm-hmm. But, and a lot of this is also going to come from their hunger. Like, how much do they desire to learn the business, manage the business, grow the business? And there are some assessments of, hunger, how good of a team player they are, other areas for skills. So I think it's a combination of things. And I think that oftentimes it may be intuitively clear to the person inside the business, both the individual in question and the business owner who's transitioning. But they haven't just made it conscious, and that by having a third party talk to this individual, or individuals, right? Because there could be a group of children, or they could be cousins, like I said in the earlier example, and you now are assessing each person individually. And I think this is something that should take place over time. It isn't like I'm going to sit down and interview 6 siblings or 6 relatives and come back at the end of a month and say, I interviewed all these 6 people and here's my answer. Because people do evolve. I might talk to a 23-year-old who by the time they're 25 could be an incredible leader, but today they're just a rookie. So you do need to look at things over time as well.
Okay. Got it. So the business, the owner wants to transfer it to the kids. A leader is established somehow, some way. What kind of are the steps? If we could break it down of like, want to transfer, need to establish a leader, need to establish vision, goals. What would that look like?
Oh, well, I think that, so I'm going to emphasize that this needs to be gradual. And one of the things to do is to slowly transfer responsibilities to your children over time. And so what I've done with clients before in the past is let's start by mapping out what the organization could look like on paper. In the absence of any names, let's talk about what are the positions that this company currently needs. Is there someone in the financial seat? Is there someone who's managing sales? Is there someone who's managing operations? Is there someone who is in the customer support? Is there someone who is good in production and scheduling and estimating and field work? So let's map out on paper, like with an organization chart, and then let's get some clarity around what are the handful of key things that each one of those positions is responsible for. And then let's flesh that out and let's turn that into a job description. Now, let's look at the children and let's have them apply for the position that looks like the best fit. And let's ask the coworkers or the other children, is Johnny a good fit for this particular field position or for this financial position? And you don't have to fill the seats. We're not talking about putting the best person. We're talking about, are they the right fit? If they're not competent in financials, but they're the best one in the group, that doesn't mean they belong in that seat. It means that seat maybe goes unfilled and we need to find an outside expert to fill that seat. So then let's let these people work in these different positions, and then let's evaluate them over time. Let's do a 30-day check-in. Let's do a 90-day review. Maybe that was the wrong seat. Let's assume they're the right person. And by right person, I mean that they share the cultural values of the company. They are a good fit in terms of their being on the team, but they're just in the wrong seat. Is there another seat that we can put them in and do that same thing? Try them for 30 days, give them a review, 90 days, go through, a full performance review. So gradually increasing responsibilities as these individuals gain experience, gain confidence. This allows them to adjust to their new roles and ensures a smoother transition. And I think all this takes time, and it becomes clearer over time, especially if there's an outside professional like a business consultant or coach or, someone like myself who's validating, yeah, they're doing a good job. Because not only will we have responsibilities, key responsibilities, but we'll also tie a handful of performance metrics or measures. And that way we'll know, they're doing their job well, and they'll know they're doing their job well, right? You wouldn't hire a salesperson without having some performance measures in place. And so we would do the same thing for each one of the positions and make sure there was performance measures. So that's how I would approach it. And each company is going to be different. I don't know where they are in this process. Maybe they have nothing on paper, nothing identified, nothing planned. But once we have the semblance of a team and people in the right seats, now to get back to your question, I then put these people in a room, in a meeting, and let's talk about, where do you want to be in a year, in 3 years, in 5 and 10 years? What do you need to do in the next 90 days to get to the 1 year, 3 year goals? What do you need to learn? What do you need to measure? What does success look like? And so we see who's driving the front of the bus or the train or whatever the analogy is, who's leading with vision, who's excited, who's got that hunger, who's got the passion to take the business to the next level. Because the more family members you add to the business, the more the business has to grow to support each one of those family members, right? If you're going to add, if there's a mom and dad that's running and owning the business and you're going to add 4 children to the business, you need to 4 or 5x that business so that all these families can be supported. And that can be done over time, because I'm assuming that these 4 children don't have spouses and children of their own, which is when the burden of a lot of expenses come in our lives. But eventually they'll probably have families, and those families will need to be supported. And so you're going to need to grow the business. And this is the process that you'll have to go through to turn it over, succeed, and grow.
Wow. So you help them break down various positions within the company, sales, finance, and so on, field work, all that, everything. And then there's KPIs within each position. And then it's the siblings or family members are working the different positions, and based on those KPIs, either you're seeing progress in the right direction or not. And if so it's not just a 1 month thing, you didn't hit the KPIs, you're out. It's more, let's see gradually over what, 3 months. If we're seeing a progress in the right direction. And if you're not, do you see like a lot of rotation within positions and family members trying to fill different seats?
Look, I think that's going to depend upon the versatility of the children. I mean, ideally, wouldn't it be great if your kids were so versatile that they could, if they were, look, let's look at it like it's baseball. Wouldn't it be great if they could bat and field left-handed and right-handed? Wouldn't that make them pretty versatile? Wouldn't it be great if they could play third base and first base? What about pitch and being the outfield? I mean, but typically what I find is that there's a child who gravitates towards being in the field. They don't have the book smarts or the interest to learn things like computers and finances and accounting, and they don't want to be in an office. They dread the idea of having a roof over their head and being shackled to a desk, and be on Zoom meetings or things like that. They're good technically, and so they need to shine in the field. And they might not even be interested in having KPIs, but we'll have to figure out, so what's a good KPI? I don't know. Maybe safety. Looking at safety first, right? Excavation is a business that could be prone to people getting injured, right? And so the ability of them to implement a safety program and have it be worked and have no safety incidents, that might be the KPI. And that's not a 1 month measurement. That's a longer term measurement. And then you might have someone who's seems to be what we all like to call a natural born leader. They tend to be one who's organizing people and exciting them and motivating them. And so that person might emerge to be more of the CEO type position. So you have to know your children, but wouldn't it be great if if they could move seamlessly, inside, outside, marketing and sales, operations and fulfillment. That'd be great, right? Because then you could go away and I don't need to worry if someone needs to jump on the excavator. Joe, he's good at that. He'll take care of it.
Who would be a good fit for transferring their business to their kids or family members?
So I would say that anyone who's reached an age, and age is relative, right? But reached an age where their vitality is maybe not as strong, or their ambition is not as great as it used to be, where maybe physically they've been doing a lot of laboring and they just can't physically do that kind of work, getting up and in and out of an excavator. Someone who is having difficulty finding people to come work for their company because the labor market is short, or because you're having issues with trusting other people, but you do trust your children. Someone who wants to amplify the growth of the business and sees that by bringing a child more into the fold, giving them maybe some ownership stake, holding them to a higher, standard, more accountable, giving them more income. This is basically placing a bet on the future. It's like, God, I've never thought about this before, but Scott, like your children are like assets and investments that you can make. If you buy more of that particular stock, maybe it'll go up in value, especially if you take care of, if you treat it right. And so your business is an asset and something that you invest in. And if you want your asset to grow, you've got to bring more people into it. You've got to put more systems and processes in place. And you might find that your children are better off at hiring, at putting processes into place so that family members and others can go away on vacation and know that everything's still running well. So I think it's almost more of a mindset, even though I started with the idea that it's also where you're at with your age. I don't know too many 40-year-olds or even 50-year-olds that are really ready to transition their business, unless they're what I call mountain climbing entrepreneurs, which is they climb one peak and they're now looking at the next peak. So they build one business and they think, let's exit this business. What's the next business? And these are serial entrepreneurs. And I don't imagine there's a whole lot of them in the excavation business. These are closely held, typically passed down from generation to generation.
What other words of wisdom can you recommend to someone that's in this situation and they fit the bill? They know that for whatever reason, they've taken the business as far as they can or want to go. But, they are in a position where the business is thriving. It is successful. They do have children that are wanting, willing, and able to take it over. What else can you share with them?
I like to use the acronym BOAT. I think if you have a business that's doing between $1 million and $5 million, 5 and 10, 10 and 20 or more, you need to build yourself a boat. And a boat is a business owner advisory team. And on that business owner advisory team, you have your CPA, or who's very good with giving you financial advice, and they are doing everything they can to minimize your taxes, so that you can create wealth. Then you have let's say you've got a successful enough business, you have your financial advisor, wealth manager, and that person is investing your money wisely in other asset classes so that you can compound your wealth. You also would have a business coach, and a business coach is creating value in the business. They're teaching you how to build a stronger, stickier culture in your business. They're showing you ways to improve your profitability, drive more leads into your business, improve your gross profit margin. They're teaching you how to execute and how to drive a strong vision for the business, how to manage the cash, how to create value. And they're looking at the exit value. In other words, they're looking at the enterprise value of the business today. And when you exit or transfer the business, what's the enterprise value that they can drive you towards? So you've got your wealth manager, you've got your CPA, you've got your business coach, and the last person is probably a lawyer. A lawyer who's a good business lawyer who can help you stay out of trouble if it comes to workers' comp claims that are bogus, or wrongful terminations that people can be individuals can be litigious, and so protecting you, making sure that you've got buy-sell agreements in place with your children, maybe key man insurance or key person insurance. So the lawyer is there to protect the value of your business so that it doesn't get destroyed by outside forces or people. So that's your boat, and you ought to have one. And, a lot of times I come into clients, smaller companies, the $1 to $5 million companies, and they don't really have any of those people in place. The $5 to $10 million have a few of these key people, and the 10 to 20 or larger in terms of millions usually have the financial, maybe the estate planner, the wealth manager, but not always the business consultant or coach, because some of the others are needed for compliance, right? You need to have an accountant for compliance. You have to file your taxes. And a business consultant or coach can really create value if you get the right one with the right experience.
Awesome. Now, you specialize in helping to transfer the business to children. Do you also specialize in just overall transferring the business to new owners and in that way too?
So I really specialize as a growth coach, and that's both being a personal and business development, business growth. So in terms of transferring, a lot of times that's a legal, that requires a lawyer. It's a legal process. So I don't get involved in that, but I might advise the clients on what might be a fair structure. What are the steps that you need to do to get an appraisal, get a value? So it's not my area of expertise, and I leave that to the lawyers to do that work.
Sure. Awesome. Well, I think that this was awesome. I mean, there was so much information and good advice in this segment that how can people find you and reach out to you if they have more questions or need some help?
Right. So There's a lot of different ways they can find me. I'm on LinkedIn, Jonathan Goldhill, the Goldhil Group. Disruptive Successor is both the title of my book and the title of my podcast. You just Google Disruptive Successor, you'll find me. And thank you for showing the book. Yep, it's a guide for driving growth in your family business.
Great book, guys.
Thank you. And my website, thegoldhillgroup.com. You can learn more about what I do, read more about my background, my programs, and a ton of blog content on there, as well as all the podcasts. So lots of different ways they can find me. Thanks for asking.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess that's pretty much time. I want to thank you so much for being on the Excavation Profits podcast, and loved having you on as a guest. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Scott.
All right. Take care. Have a good one. Everyone, thanks for joining us, and reach out to Jonathan. He is your business expert, your business growth expert. Contact him with any questions or concerns. And I guess that's it. We'll make it a wrap. All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hey there, excavation pros. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to like and subscribe to our podcast and channel. Leave us your feedback and let us know how we did. And hey, if you're interested in taking your excavation or septic business to the next level online, make sure you visit excavationmarketingpros.com today and take advantage of our free resources and mastermind group for excavation and septic industry professionals.